Hi, this is Bob, and for today's 10-minute tour, we're going to do part 2 of the AP settings screens in accounts payable. A couple verifications or updates that I have on some of the stuff I spoke of on the last recording is dealing with multiple users on the pending system. In here you have not used, which means you don't use the pending system at all. That's what ours should be at now because we don't really use it anymore. A single user really sets it so that only one person in the company puts in pending invoices. So that person puts in pending invoices, and a pending invoice really, I think yesterday I said it had to be in there to be approved or whatever, and I misspoke on that. What that means is that the invoice can be entered with missing information. So we know the vendor, we know the invoice number, we know the amount, but we really don't have all the job cost information to know whether it applies to a commitment or not, etc. So you can put it in there. Now it's kind of in the system. It's logged. If you get a call, you can look and see if there is an invoice in there, so we know we've already got it. Once you get information from, say, a project manager to get it coded correctly, you come into the pending invoice system, you finish out that invoice, and you finish the pending on it, basically. Then it becomes a real invoice. So a single user gives that assignment to one person in the company. Multiple users allows each AP clerk to maintain their own set of pending invoices. Whoever put that invoice in originally has to finish the pending portion of it. You can't, it's not like a big group of them. So that's one correction from yesterday. The other is in the approval system. So if you use the approval system, what that does is until it gets approved, basically you'll have a list here of invoices either approved or unapproved. You could set it for both. I would probably set it to unapproved only if I was using it. That way you can go into that invoice and approve it once you've gotten an okay from a project manager. That invoice then becomes available to show up on payment selection screens. Up until then, you can't select it for payment because it hasn't been approved. There again, our TimberScan system has really kind of made a lot of these selections in AP useless because it doesn't get into the system till it's approved now, and it becomes a pending invoice as soon as we put the basic information in for the invoice. So, and let's see, the third item I had an update on was this retain 1099 totals per GL prefix. For sake of argument, I'll click on this and it shows a little more about what it is. So select this checkbox to keep track of 1099 totals by GL fiscal entity prefix as well as by vendor. You can view the amounts in the maintain prefix totals window. If you select this checkbox during the 1099 year, run the recalculate 1099's totals tool to update the amounts per GL prefix. So if you check this mid-year, you'll want to run that tool. That's all the corrections I really had on stuff we'd gone over yesterday. I think we left off in here. Yes, we did. We went through that. And now into GL entry settings. So in GL entry settings, you can put in GL base accounts that tie to each of these functions. So accounts payable, you're going to have one accounts payable GL account for. You could have a separate one for if it's going to be a credit card payable. Commitment payable, we don't keep a separate one. We put it in with our regular accounts payable. PO payable, same idea. Retainage payable, we do keep retainage in a separate GL account. Discounts, we put to a revenue account. And then we do intercompany receivables and payables. We set it up early. I sort of wish we hadn't, but it's really meant for multi-entity companies so that one company pays the invoices for the whole group, and it creates back and forth payables and receivable entries automatically. Invoice journal, you set these up in a separate area, but this is where you assign what invoice journal number to use for an invoice journal, or what journal number to use for an invoice journal, and what journal number to use for a payment journal. And depending on what you select, it puts the name of it there. Reference columns, invoice reference 1 is going to be the invoice number, reference 2 is going to be the check number, description of content, or the amount that goes in, or the description that goes in the column that's called description is going to be vendor name in our case. There again, click on help if you have more questions with it, but it's pretty much a set it and forget it kind of thing unless you add something, if you add credit cards later on. Payment selection settings. This is where when you go into select invoices, do you want to see them by vendor or by invoice? Do you want to include invoices that are already included for payment, or only ones that are excluded, or both? We put both because we want to be able to deselect one that we've selected, and you can't do that if it's not showing. You can click that to show more detail down at the bottom. Otherwise, I think there's an option on that process to go in and show detail. And then these are the type of things that are going to show up under description, or the distribution section, if you need to look at that to make a decision as to whether to select an invoice or not for payment. Orders. Okay, so this is where you set up how things show in your invoice selection screen. So you can select to have job and commitment show first. There's a whole bunch of different things in here that you can do. For payments, we want to select them by vendor first. Reports and inquiries, we want job and then the prefix and then equipment. And so you can select how you see those things by changing those settings. Compliance settings. This we do use. If you haven't done compliance management through Timberline, you're missing out on a really good part of the software. It takes a little while to get set up, but we do not use lien waivers at this point through it. We manually do lien waivers still. Just part of the software we haven't implemented. We do certified reports, and we base that on invoice date. You can base it on a system date or an invoice date. And then compliance warnings, I'll click into that. And so this tells you what you can and can't do based on certain things. So we don't use lien waivers, so nothing's checked there. Certified reports, we have it notify when making an entry into an invoice. We have it notify us when selecting an invoice, and it blocks the payment of the invoice if we have selected it and go to run checks. So if your certifieds aren't up to date with us, you're not going to get a check because it won't, the system just blocks it. Very helpful. Same with insurance. We have it display during invoice entry if their insurance is expired. We have it give you a warning when you select the invoice. You can still select it, but it won't pay it because it's blocked. So and what happens is, as soon as you get that invoice and you go into the compliance module and say we've received it, next check run you do, that invoice gets paid. It's already kind of selected and approved, but it won't pay until it's actually received. And then miscellaneous, we have these set up, but we haven't implemented that part of the software yet. We started dabbling in it a little. I had some trouble getting consensus in our company as how to do it, but it's those same three settings. And the same would be true for lien waivers. You could have it set up so if you don't have their lien waiver, it's not going to allow them to be paid their next payment. And that is about it for the AP settings module. I thank you much for listening to this 10-minute tour. I got done a few seconds early today. Thanks much now.